Is this the GS that truly rides straight into my heart? And could this be the GS that steals your heart as well? The answer's in this video. Hello and welcome to 1000 PSTV. I'm here on sunny Gran Canaria. Canaria Ride, our trusted rental partner in Las Palmas, has provided me with a BMW R 1300 GS adventure. We rode the BMW R 1300 GS yesterday, really intensively. And today it was finally the R12 GS's turn. I'm not sure how you see it, whether you're even allowed to mention these three bikes in the same breath, or whether they're completely different machines. But the name links them. GS. The rough one, the wild, the untamed bike here. So I'll try to sort that out for you a bit. Because I have to confess one thing, the 1300 GS BMW's core model convinced us on yesterday's test rides with pragmatic arguments. This automatic suspension lowering. It's unbelievably practical. It made the bike more accessible for a broad audience. The GS Adventure, the big bike with luggage and a pillion, is simply a truly faithful companion for insanely long tours. But I must admit, I haven't played around with BMW's configurator all that often, whereas with the GS, I think I've already run the configurator end to end, I know all the variants, and it always comes out a little pricier, which is why I still haven't bought one. But my wallet's really itching because of it, and time and again it's illuminating and fascinating how much this bike rides straight into my heart. Today I swung a leg over it, and I must admit, the very first mount feels a bit intimidating on this bike. In the photos, it looks a bit small and approachable. Cute, pretty, sexy, and desirable. But folks, I'm 1.84 m. Right now it's parked a bit at an angle. I don't want it any higher, and I reckon if you're under 1.78 m, you won't want to be shuffling it about on a slope. It's a big bike and it feels heavy when you're maneuvering it, even though to the eye it looks much lighter than an R 1300 GS, and that has to be said. It's a pragmatic downside that clearly narrows the target audience, because compared with the R 1300 GS and its boring tech party tricks, namely adaptive ride height, this one is obviously more limited in who it suits. You need to be a fully grown, decent-sized human to push it around. As for the other bits while I was in the saddle, well, I'll explain in a second what I mean. I was grinning like a cheeky kid on the bike. I caught myself thinking, finally, a motorcycle where you can be properly daft again. On downshifts, the rear tire whimpers. There's no automatic engine braking control baked in here, so if you click down a gear and don't blip the throttle like we were taught back in the day, it hops a touch and squeals along, and you get very pronounced on-off throttle reactions when you roll on. The engine feels very much alive. You'd probably call it charisma, like in the old days. That's the fascinating thing about the BMW R12 GS. They've made this big capacity brute with real charisma and character, raw and unbridled, so you get that proper old school feel. But on the motorway or the linking sections, you just glide along and the engine purrs like a kitten. It's all lovely. In that riding state, it's balanced and remarkably approachable. What has to be said though, it's the kind of bike I don't think we've had in the GS lineup for quite some time. You've got a 21-inch front wheel, you've got a wide handlebar, you're sitting upright in the wind, and when you're threading your way over a twisty mountain pass and give the throttle a proper handful now and then, you have to say it. There's noticeably more movement in the saddle and a bit of a nervous streak compared with the regular GS models. It even has the sticker on it, VMAX 160 km/h. That's because of the mud and snow tires it's wearing now. I reckon that probably does the chassis a favor because you're not tempted to ride it much faster. I'd say up to about 140, 150 it still felt reasonably at home. But this wouldn't be the sort of bike where I'd say load it up with heavy luggage and sit at high cruising speeds on the German Autobahn. That's not its thing, and I think that's obvious the moment you look at it. There's less wind protection, there's a hint of instability baked in. It's clearly a less sensible interpretation than the classic GS models. That's just how it is. It does have a steering damper to tame it a bit, but on the practical side, the spray protection is poorer and, effectively, there's no real wind protection. And as for the splash protection, as good as it looks now, it only looks like that if it hasn't been raining. Otherwise, it gets a lot muckier than the 1300 GS or the Adventure we've been riding these past few days. Those keep you and the bike much better sheltered from the wet. What's also fascinating is that BMW has managed to combine this control concept with incredibly small, compact displays in a clever way. So you can actually operate the things you want to operate, and if you want, you even get a rev counter in there. So, the basic operation of the bike works exactly as you know it from other BMWs. And this wide handlebar, out on winding mountain roads, and the 21-inch front wheel, plus the way it is with the engine capacity and the setup, had me thinking almost of a supermoto, or it reminded me, some of you might still know it, of the HP2. That's what popped into my head while I was riding it. An HP2 was also one of those gloriously unreasonable, untamed wild beasts. And it brings a bit of vibration with it too. Over longer stints it was almost a touch annoying, those vibes in your hands. The bar is solid mounted, one long tube, so you do get the vibrations through. Not everyone will like that. And something else that's a bit uncomfortable, even when you're maneuvering. If you keep knocking into them, those brutal foot pegs will bite into your calves. These are the sort of practical little details. The seat not only looks good, it's surprisingly comfortable too. So if you compare these three bikes, the GS, the GS Adventure, and this one, I wouldn't put myself through this unless, hand on heart, you truly tick two boxes. First, height, please make it 1.78 meters. At 1.75, it's already a faff because it's heavy. And second, you really do need to be a properly good rider. That's just how it is. When you're charging up and down mountain passes with this brutal big engine and the tarmac isn't the finest, you have to be able to guide this big boxer monster beautifully, both on the brakes and on the gas. It's more direct, more untamed, wilder, harder to ride than a 1300 GS, and I'd even say than a 1300 GS Adventure. Because on those, the electronics and throttle response are ironed out even more. And so, of course, this is the cool bike, the one ridden by proper riders who can still genuinely ride. But the problem is, now people are also gravitating to it who don't fit that brief, too small, or maybe not skilled enough. Then you just end up suffering for nothing, and that's a shame. If you don't meet those two criteria, do yourself a favor and buy an R90. There are versions that are gorgeous as well. Don't put yourself through this, you won't enjoy it. It'll just sit in the garage and you won't really ride it. I have to say, for me the bike rides and behaves about 70% like I expected from the photos, and like I'd hoped and dreamt. In the saddle and when maneuvering, it's heavier, bigger and more imposing than I'd thought. But that's fine for me, I'm fairly tall and experienced. What works better than expected is that the ride comfort from the engine is actually nicer than I'd imagined, but the playful side and the impractical bits are definitely pronounced, and that's where I'm torn now. Am I cool enough for it, or will the pragmatic bloke in me win out? I'm thinking, who knows if I'd actually end up riding it? I mean, I took photos with a top case on the back, mate. It looks absolutely mad. Sure, you can probably, no idea if there are any properly sexy bags, stick some luggage solutions on this beautiful bike. It's just a completely different vibe. If you just strap it onto the back of your Adventure, you can load up far more. It's simply practical for heading south, whereas here it's really just a visual thing. Those are the practical downsides. I've ridden quite a few bikes here on Gran Canaria over the years, plenty around these roads, but hardly any bike in these bends gave me that cheeky urge to give it the beans, scorch past my mates and do silly stuff in the saddle. And that's something that's been a bit lost on the other GS models. They're too ironed out for that. Here it's properly back. I honestly felt years younger, transported back to the time when 1000 PS filming dates were always race dates. And if you miss those times when you messed about in the saddle, this might be the BMW GS that brings those days back to life for you. Yeah, otherwise I've nothing more to add. Maybe a quick word about the kit I'm running here. This time I'm using Venucci gear. What's insanely tricky here on Gran Canaria, well, tricky given the weather, is that you're dealing with a fairly wide temperature window and I don't want to be faffing with mid-layers. I need something light that I can fly with and that's comfy all day. The ventilation system is spot on. You open the zip and then there's a second zip. That second zip lets pressure build and channels the airflow in, so you can let the wind whistle through, and under the armpits too. It's a great plus because I can operate it while riding. So it worked perfectly for me to unzip it 10 times through the day, and I was switching around between 10 and 28 degrees outside temperature. Otherwise, there's just one thing I always end up mentioning. Yes, when we're out riding, we're connected via Cardo headsets. Though in everyday life, that's only really relevant if you're riding with a pillion or with mates. Now that I'm looking at it, there's one more point I hadn't touched on. Worth mentioning, folks, this has a conventional suspension setup. There's no button you press and it sorts itself out. It's a relatively firm setup. Otherwise, the whole thing would probably get too unstable. Relatively firm, yes, and you can tweak it a few clicks, but you'll be getting a spanner out again. Overall, it's stiffer than you'd expect, so that the long travel and the torque can actually work in harmony out here on the road. That's been cool. On poor tarmac, you do find yourself thinking an electronic suspension would be handier. All those things you don't get here. No automatic load compensation, no front compression closing itself on corner entry. You get the full-on slash-off throttle reactions and the responses from the suspension you used to get in the past. If you can't deal with that, you'll wonder why it's a bit more demanding to ride. What did impress me though is the super accessible yet very discreet rear preload adjuster wheel. It's integrated in black so subtly you hardly see it, but it's incredibly easy to use. You can set the rear preload to match your load. As for accessories, it's got crash bars fitted, which is handy for the rental outfit, so tip overs don't cost as much. For us, it's handy because we can mount the Insta360S Pro 2 on there, and I reckon we shot some cracking footage with it. Right then, folks, I hope I've managed to place the BMW R12 GS properly for you versus the 1300 GS and versus the 1300 GS Adventure, the supremely capable touring machine. If you already own one privately, drop a comment below about how you're getting on. Maybe there are GS owners here who can also position it against the regular GS models. Feel free to correct me here or there and leave helpful comments for the community. In any case, thanks a lot for your interest, your appreciation, and your thumbs up. Your thumbs do my soul more good than the sun. Thanks, cheers, and see you soon on 1000 PS TV.